The Iowa State Cyclones are in a great position to win the Big 12 this year with nearly every starter returning on both sides of the ball and a coach in Matt Campbell who's a rising star in college football. Can they be a college football playoff contender? That is the biggest question surrounding this team. And many people are still picking Oklahoma to win the Big 12, but Iowa State is definitely the front runner in terms of their top competition. And when you look at the top 10 players they have returning, it's easy to see why they're going to be one of the best teams in the entire country. At number 10, we have linebacker Jake Hummel. Now, Hummel is arguably the second or third best linebacker on this team. You could put him or Orion Vance here. I have no complaints. He was honorable mention Big 12 last year with 80 tackles, 4.5 for a loss. A guy that's one of a trio that you can make a case is, outside of Alabama, the best trio of linebackers in college football. Number 9, guard Derek Schweiger, second team All Big 12 selection, is a former walk-on, so his story is pretty cool. The fact that he's gotten to this point from being a walk-on is an incredible story, one that coaches will love to use as an example for walk-ons in the future and anybody that is an underdog, really. Number 8, wide receiver Xavier Hutchinson. First team Big 12 selection last year with 771 yards and 4 touchdowns. Iowa State really needs to open up the passing game a little bit more, and guys like Hutchinson are going to play a big role in that. There's a handful of other guys that can be participants in that explosive passing game, and we'll talk about one of them in a second here, but there are plenty of other guys like Tariq Milton, who we're not going to talk about today, but Milton's a guy who can take the top off of defense as well. Very explosive player with a lot of potential to open up the passing game for Brock Purdy, the quarterback, and guys like Hutchinson as well. But Hutchinson is a great talent in his own right, so he's going to be a guy that you're definitely going to want to watch when it comes to Iowa State's offense this year. Number 7 is Colin Newell, guy who played center last year, has flexibility to move around the offensive line. With 27 games under his belt, he's one of the best linemen in all of college football this year. Number 6 is Brock Purdy. Now, Brock took a step backwards last year in terms of his development. At one point, considered one of the best quarterbacks in college football. He can definitely get back to that point, but one thing that he'll need to do is, we talked about before, is open up the passing game, be a little bit more consistent, and find a way to make explosive plays through the air. We know that they can do it on the ground with a guy that we'll talk about here in a little bit, but the passing game needs to do their part. If they're going to be a college football playoff contender, they're going to have to be able to throw the ball deep, and if they're going to beat teams like Oklahoma, they're going to have to find a way to make big plays outside of the running game, like I said. Number 5 is Will McDonald, the only returning defensive lineman that is on a all-conference selection. It's a guy who had a big year last year and with 13 tackles for loss and 10.5 sacks. He'll need someone else to step up to help him out with the loss of Jaquan Bailey, but this is a guy who can carry that load until someone else decides they want to help and step up for the Cyclones this year. But again, a defense that's going to be loaded. Will McDonald is a guy that teams will definitely send more attention to, which opens up pass rushing lanes for other defensive ends, other defensive tackles to step up and make big plays. Number 4, gregeisworth II. Eisworth decided to come back instead of going pro, and that's huge for the Cyclones. He gives them a leader on the backside of the defense, a guy who does a little bit of everything for them. With 201 tackles in his career and 19 passes defended, he just knows how to make plays. And his return is arguably the biggest return of anyone on this team. Number 3 is tight end Charlie Kohler. I mentioned that Iowa State's passing game needs to take a step forward in terms of explosiveness, and Charlie Kohler may not be a guy that's going to burn anybody, but he's definitely capable of making big plays downfield. Talk about a guy who you can throw the ball up to, a strong catcher at the catch point, strong hands, doesn't get the ball knocked out of his hands too often. Very, very big target, and someone that Brock Purdy can utilize on a consistent basis. Number 2 is Mike Rose, arguably one of the best players in all of college football. He's improved his stats every single year, and last year he was a second team All-American, first team All-Big 12. His best season was last year, actually. Like I said, he's improved every single year. Last year he had 99 tackles, 10.5 were for loss, with 5 interceptions. And a guy who's a leader, just like Eisworth is, and someone who's going to make sure his players are in position. He is very smart. He does the work off the field as well. Doesn't matter where Iowa State lines him up, he's going to make plays for them. He's going to step up in a big way, and Iowa State doesn't really have to worry about anything when he is on the field. And, of course, number 1, Breece Hall, first team All-American last year, led the entire country in rushing with 1,572 yards and 21 touchdowns. Had no choice to come back. He was just sophomore last year, so he'll be a junior. Probably his last year with the Cyclones. And honestly, it's going to be next year is going to be tough for Iowa State. They're going to lose a lot of guys. You're probably going to lose Hall, Rose, Kohler, Eisworth, McDonald, Purdy, Newell. You're probably going to lose actually all of these guys on this list. You might get 1 or 2 of them back. Well, I should say Hutchinson will probably be back, and then you might get a couple guys back. But it's just a lot of talent's going to be lost. They probably have the most or the least amount of talent returning when it comes to the 2022 season. But for now, this is a team that is looking for 2021. They're hoping to reach the college football playoff, hoping to upset Oklahoma in the Big 12. A team with a ton of talent, like I said, very, very loaded roster. There's no reason why they shouldn't be a contender throughout the year. If you look at last year with the game against Louisiana, that was obviously not very good. But I think now they learned from that mistake. They've learned from that loss, and they can turn things around into arguably one of the greatest stories of the 2021 season. No one's really picking Iowa State to beat Oklahoma. I think everybody still picks Oklahoma as the favorite. Not many more are even picking them to be a college football playoff contender, so I think that feeds right into the underdog narrative that they're used to, even though they're still one of the favorites in all of college football and in the Big 12. As you can see, this top 10 is loaded. There's no reason why they can't make a run. It really just comes down to, can they fix those hiccups that they have? Can they prove that they can beat the teams they're supposed to beat and then maybe pull off an upset or two? A talented team that's capable of making the playoff for sure. And I know, unless the injury bug or again something else bites them, I don't see anything less than a Big 12 championship should be acceptable. This is the year if they're going to do it. A lot of people think it was last year, but this is another good year for them to do it. They're not going to sneak up on anybody, so they have to prove that they can handle that spotlight. But again, this is a talented team, and Matt Campbell has hit his team ready and loaded to make a run. A team that's talented and ready to go for 2021, and it'll be interesting to see how this story ends.